gameplay of FromSoft's Sekiro has been praised nearly universally, and rightfully so, but one aspect of this game that I feel is just as masterful, that rarely gets its desserts, is the atmosphere present in the game. Sekiro has a dense and foreboding atmosphere that can be sincerely downright terrifying at times. I'll never forget when I wandered into a pitch black cave only to see a faint purple glow in the distance. As I inch closer and closer to the source, I suddenly get greeted by a decapitated demon wearing a loincloth, who then grabs me and gives me a forcible prostate exam. I've never been so utterly baffled and completely horrified by a single moment in my gaming career before or since. In Sekiro, the side story of Hanbei the Undying takes this sense of dread and spreads it across a 200-page manga, and I couldn't be happier. For those unfamiliar with Sekiro, one of the earliest NPCs you meet is an old samurai named Hanbei the Undying. Like most of the NPCs in From Software games, he is an enigmatic figure, and about the only thing you know for sure surrounding him is his special ability, the fact that he cannot die. Hanbei allows the player to basically utilize him as a training dummy for their new techniques, and especially by From Software standards, is a pretty swell guy despite the cryptic figure that he imposes. What the Sekiro side story manga seeks to do is give us a glimpse to the kind of man Hanbei was before the events of the story, and how his life as an immortal being served to turn him into the individual we run into at the start of the wolf's journey in the game. The manga begins on a bloody battlefield in Japan's Sengoku period, where a man named Isshin Ashina, also known as the Sword Saint, has recently cut down the general of the opposing army. Isshin is then confronted by a lone samurai in heavy armor who was a member of the opposing force. Ashina tells the man that his lord was killed, so in order to preserve his honor, the only thing that he can do is commit seppuku and atone. The man responds simply stating that he cannot do, quite literally as we'll learn later, and enters battle with Ashina. The fight begins quickly, with Ashina attempting to cut the man down with the technique that fans of Sekiro will immediately recognize, the Ichimonji. To Ashina's surprise, the man deflects the first hit, but unfortunately for the lone samurai, the attack is not over. Ashina then lets out a cry, yelling Ichimonji double, and in the next panel, the samurai lies motionless on the ground, nearly cut in half by the assault. The next page informs us that approximately 20 years have passed since the Sword Saint's victory, and the Ashina clan have become a major power in the land. We are shown a glimpse of a small village, and down the road, an old, disheveled-looking man can be seen slowly shuffling to the village entrance. The wanderer's progress is halted by the shout of a young man at the entrance of the village telling him to stop. The wanderer does not heed the young man's warning, so he draws his sword and attacks the wanderer. At first, the young man smiles at having made contact with the wanderer's wrist with his sword, but this smile quickly fades when he realizes he seems unable to cut all the way through the man's arm. Not only that, the wanderer is not even looking at him despite being attacked like this, and when he peers into the man's eyes, what can only be described as a lifeless void stares back. The young man shudders and moves backwards, when all of a sudden, the wanderer collapses. A young woman emerges from the forest and reprimands the young man, whose name we learn is Shokichi. The young woman decides to take the old man into her home, dresses his wounds, and feeds him, much to the consternation of Shokichi. We learn that the young woman's name is Suzu. Herself, Shokichi, and her son all live together in their small village, attempting to make a living together. Before introductions can be completed, a member of the village bursts into the house and informs Shokichi that bandits have been spotted coming down the mountain and appear to be preparing to attack the village. Shokichi tells Suzu, the young boy, and the old man to stay in the house while he prepares to defend their village from further attack. While Shokichi leaves, Suzu gives more information to the wanderer about the tragedy that has befallen the village, how her husband was lost due to the war, and how she and Shokichi lost their parents due to the war as well. Her worry is that if things continue as they are, her son will be lost because of the repeated ongoing conflicts. Hearing this, the old man gets up, thanks Suzu, and in the next panel he arrives on the scene in front of the bandits with Shokichi, stating that it has been a long time since he has had a reason to raise his sword, and asks the men in front of him if they will be the ones to take his life. Hanbei unsheathes his broken sword from its scabbard. Hearing the harsh words of the man, coupled with his broken equipment and presumed frailty, makes the men laugh and they begin to attack. To the absolute shock of Shokichi, the man is more than proficient with the blade and cuts down the first two bandits with ease. The leader of the bandits then draws a sword and begins fighting with the wanderer. To the wanderer's surprise, the technique the bandit utilizes is a sword style that he has seen before. Before the wanderer can react, he receives a lethal cut from the Ichimonji sword technique the bandit utilizes. The battle should be over, but to everyone's bewilderment, the old man gets back up. Upon seeing the old man get back up from what should have been a lethal attack, the bandit leader reflects on how he has heard tales of men who are known as the infested. By some circumstance of fate, they have grown corrupted, and the rules of life and death that govern most human beings no longer appear to apply to them. The old man then cries out again and dashes towards the leader. The bandit cannot help but notice how strong this old man is, and while in the middle of their conflict, asks for the man's name. The wanderer states that he left that long ago, but as time has passed, he has become known by the title Hanbei the Undying. It is now Hanbei's turn to go on the offensive, and he makes a deep wound in the leg of the bandit leader. While doing this, he is stabbed in the side by another member of the bandit party while his attention was focused on the leader. In a fit of superhuman physicality, Hanbei grips the man's head who stabbed him, pierces his eye with his finger, and shoves his skull into the dirt. Hanbei, wounded, is stabbed in the back by the leader, who then makes a hasty retreat with his subordinate, deciding it better to leave and heal rather than deal with Hanbei again before he is resurrected. Hanbei eventually regains consciousness, and he once again finds himself in the care of Suzu, who has nursed his wounds back and washed his clothes and given him a meal to eat. Shokichi thanks Hanbei for saving his life and informs him that he plans on joining a search party to get rid of the rest of the bandits in the mountains before they can attack their home again. Hanbei agrees to assist the villagers with this task, gruffly telling everyone that he just needs a reason to kill some time. I'll end the summary here, as I don't want to spoil too much, but I can assure you the story only gets more interesting from here. One thing I feel this manga does really well is appeal to both fans of Sekiro, as well as readers who may have no exposure to the game. The story can be digested and enjoyed completely on its own merits, with zero knowledge of Sekiro the video game. But for those who are coming in with knowledge of Sekiro, there are so many Easter eggs, references to the game's lore, and even game mechanics that having context of the game world and who the major players are will only bolster your enjoyment. While reading, it was made abundantly clear to me that author Shin Yamamoto has a true appreciation for Sekiro. Not only that, he seems to have a keen understanding of the aesthetic and atmosphere that From Software sought to create in their title. From Software games are notorious for their cryptic nature, with first-time playthroughs often leaving players with more questions than they'll have answers. Item descriptions are vague, NPCs seemingly talking riddles, and while it may be difficult for some to appreciate, the obtuse nature of these games lends the worlds that From Software creates a unique charm and feeling that you only really get from playing one of their titles. The side story of Hanbei did a sincerely excellent job with making the manga feel like an in-universe extension of the world of Sekiro. While Sekiro is full of lightning-quick action and set-piece moments, what is also a distinctly significant part of the version of feudal Japan that Sekiro crafts is the ever-present sense of foreboding and horror that is a part of this world. Yamamoto absolutely nails this, with some sections of the manga feeling as though they are stripped directly from a Junji Ito page more than a samurai action story. The world the characters inhabit feels like it is in dire straits. There's a constant feeling of tension pervading every panel of the manga, with the reader feeling as though things can turn upside down at any moment, in the same way that the characters are contending with this reality as well. One might ask how you create a sense of tension in a manga where the main character's power is that he literally can't die. I know I asked this, but somehow Yamamoto does, and I think his ability to create tension in a story like this has to do with him crafting a strong supporting cast in a small amount of time. Despite the short duration we get to spend with the characters in the story, Yamamoto manages to make you care about the members of the small family by providing us with moments of subtle characterization throughout the manga to give the reader a chance to learn who these people are. Shokichi comes off as a hot-headed and boastful young fool at the beginning of the manga, but through his interactions with his family, Hanbei, and even the bandits, we learn that he has a deep love for his family as well as his village, and is willing to put his life on the line if it means he can protect those things. Through our interactions with Hanbei, we learn that Suzu has a big heart and is a natural caretaker, willing to feed and clothe someone she has never met despite her household having very little resources, simply because it's the right thing to do. We learn that Suzu's son, though shy and bashful, has a playful side and enjoys playing and crafting despite his environment rarely allowing him to just be a kid. And though he comes off as gruff and callous, Hanbei plays games with Suzu's son, trains Shokichi in the way of the sword, and repeatedly puts his body through hell for a group of people he only recently met, despite his insistence that he does not care. Much as it occurs in From Software games, Yamamoto found a way to accentuate important details in the margins of the characters, making it easy to get invested in who all these people are, despite not having volumes and volumes worth of dialogue to tell you outright. While Hanbei himself may not be in mortal danger, the stakes are raised through Hanbei's relationship with his makeshift family. These people give Hanbei, a man who has been previously wandering aimlessly with no purpose for decades, hope, but when one has hope, they have something to lose. And the tug-of-war that happens while Hanbei attempts to maintain these relationships in a world that desperately wants to rip them away is compelling enough to keep you turning the page. Artistically, I was a big fan of this manga as well. For most of the story, Yamamoto employs a wispy but highly detailed form of penmanship with heavy shadows, which I think fits the atmosphere of the world of Sekiro to a T. The best parts from my mileage were the shots of Hanbei and the aftermath occurring after the brutal sword battles. Yamamoto has a gift for drawing gritty, battle-worn old dudes, and he did a fantastic job of bringing Hanbei to life. He truly looks like a man who has been through hell and back. His body's covered in scars, his clothes are basically rags, and constantly has this vacant look in his eyes, pupils of a man who has seen and been through far too much and is just tired. Some of the fights end with characters being brutally maimed, and I feel Yamamoto did a great job through his use of sound effects and side panel layouts of making the reader feel the impact. I physically cringed at some of the final blows that happen in the story, and I really would not have it any other way. Sekiro, the side story of Hanbei the Undying, is worth your time whether you are a fan of the game or not. It manages to create a self-contained story that makes sense in its own right, while also fitting perfectly into the overarching narrative of Sekiro as a whole, and it's absolutely strewn with Easter eggs that'll bring a smile to the face of those who have played From Software's title. It's a short but sweet ride that I can safely recommend to fans of both horror and samurai narratives that are looking for a story with a darker atmosphere that isn't going to take them 50+ volumes to finish. So grab your sword, equip your hand cannon, and go read Sekiro's side story, Hanbei the Undying.